Good evening, everyone. We're really happy to have you here, and thank you for coming. I'm Sergeant Kevin Allen. I'm a Public Information Officer here at PPB. I'll be serving as your moderator this evening, and we're here to talk about the 2023 Portland Police Bureau Annual Report. We'll hear from Chief Day and our precinct commander, which tonight is Commander Rob Simon. First, a couple of housekeeping matters. We will be taking questions from all of you. And the way the question and answer will work is if you have a question, you can put that in the chat during the presentation or afterward. And then at the end of the prepared remarks, I will go into the chat and pull out those questions and direct them to the appropriate person. If your question is if you have a question for a specific person, of course, you can direct it to them as well. One thing I want to invite you to do is to add your questions during the presentation. So if you're hearing something that you're curious about, something that you want to learn more about, and you don't want to wait till the end, you do not have to. You can go ahead and put the remark or your question in there, and then we'll circle back to it so we make sure we get it. We understand that sometimes something may occur to you in the moment, and then it may be hard to remember later on in the meeting. So feel free to write your questions in, and we'll go ahead and address those at the end. Also, a reminder, we're recording the presentation today, as we always do, and we'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel for anyone following the meeting. One thing we find when we do these is we kind of overwhelm people with a lot of information, and sometimes it can be hard to absorb it all. We completely recognize that, and so this is an opportunity for you to kind of get a second run at the presentation and hear everything that's said. So you can look for that. The YouTube will it'll go up on our YouTube channel at Portland Police after we are finished. If you have any specific technical questions as well, our meeting host will be in the chat. I will be in the chat, and we'll be happy to address those specifically with you in the chat. All right, with all those housekeeping matters out of the way, I will turn it over to Chief Day.
Thank you, Kevin, and good evening, everyone. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be with you this evening. We are going to talk about the 2023 annual report, which is not lost on me. We're well past the halfway mark of 2024, and that could be a little bit disappointing to come to this information kind of this late in the year, but we do believe it's important to reflect and share some of the milestones and learning points over that past year. A couple of reminders. I stepped into this role last October, so the bulk of what occurred and what we're talking about was accomplished under former Chief Chuck Lavelle. As you know, he has stayed on. He's our Assistant Chief, Charge of Community Engagement. I really value Chuck and his leadership and his insights and experience and wisdom, and I just want to make sure he's given credit for leading through some really unprecedented time in our organizational history. He did so much to really keep the ship righted, make advancements. So I appreciate him. But as I speak of this, a lot of this transpired prior to my arrival in October. I also really want to just thank the men and women of the Portland Police Bureau and their continued professionalism, both our civilian staff and our sworn staff. Our professional staff, those that are not sworn police officers, are critical to the organization. There's about 300 of them, and there's about 800 sworn. And the job is challenging at times. It can be rewarding. Sometimes it's dangerous. Sometimes we interact with people really at some of the hardest, lowest points in their lives. So I just want to thank the men and women of the Police Bureau. And I absolutely want to thank each of you. When these meetings showed up on my schedule, I thought, man, people that would give up a sunny evening here in the city of Roses to join us, I'm honored and appreciative of that. And you know, your support, your participation, your awareness, your desire to learn and understand about what the Police Bureau is doing is really what makes the Police Bureau the exceptional agency that it is, because of that community relationship and because of that interaction. So thank you so much for caring about public safety and your willingness to engage this evening. You know, as we talk about the annual report, we're going to talk about some of our training goals, use of force a little bit, our recent stops data report, consent searches. I want to affirm something that Kevin said around questions. I mean, please put your questions in the chat. I am going to deliver a lot of information in a short period of time here. We're just going to roll through some slides, and I know for a fact that I will miss things or it will spark something and you'll want to know a follow-up piece. And that's why Commander Simon and I are here to make sure that we can try to circle back to that. But it is going to be a lot of information right out of the gate. You know, I want you to be able to take that in, but also hear your comments and questions. So please utilize the chat feature. I'm going to, as the PowerPoint comes up, go ahead, Terry. I'm going to move, excuse me, off camera as I go through the PowerPoint and the script, and then I'll be back on camera here towards the end when Commander Simon will have a few minutes to speak, and then we'll get into Q&A. So when I came on board, really emphasized in the fall 3 primary goals, and one of which is reducing crime and the fear of crime. Another one being transform the dynamic between the police and the people we serve, and we focus on organizational growth and development. And these 3 goals have been really drive what we do. I don't have the time or space here to elaborate, but they all connect to one another and have a significant impact on how we experience safety in the city of Portland. And I always like to recognize that safety means different things to different people. There isn't a set model or answer. All of us as individuals have our definition and belief of how safety shows up. But when I am fortunate to step into this role at a time when we have such community support. I've been all across the city meeting with numerous people in the last 10 months. And I'm constantly asked, you know, how can we help? How can we positively impact the city we love? And that was one of the motivations that brought me back, was really seeing the community effort across the board throughout Portland to really try and restore some of the beauty and the healthiness that this city has always been proud of. So we're going to start off with a few things here. One, around crime reduction. It's always nice to start with a few accomplishments. In 2023, the city of Portland saw some success in the area of crime reduction. Person crimes were down 1% compared to 2022. And gun violence had soared in recent years, but incidents of gun violence fell by 22%, although they still remain at a higher than a 4-year average. But also we're still trending downward even in 2024. But those are some positive numbers, and we're grateful for that change from 23 from 2022. Also, homicide offenses decreased by 23% from 2022, with homicides involving a firearm decreasing by about 20%. Any loss of life is too much. I don't want to skim over the fact that there were 73 homicides in 23, 61 involving a firearm. And I'll touch on this a little bit later. We're doing a lot of efforts around combating gun violence, but each one of those numbers is a loss of life. And our primary mission in policing is protecting the sanctity of life. So it saddens me to continue to have to report that number, but we are on track this year to see less. Hopefully that will be the case. As we turn to property crimes, which we know can deeply affect people, property crimes decreased 12% in 2023 compared to 2022. And, you know, property crimes sometimes can be lost in the conversation around crime, but we know they have a deep impact on people. The sense of violation that occurs when your car is broken into, your home is broken into, your property is vandalized, whatever it might be. And so we understand the impact. A stolen car might prevent you from getting a child to child care. It might prevent you from getting to work. Could have really a significant impact. So we are pleased that some of the property crime numbers decreased. There was a 25% reduction in stolen vehicles as well. So we're grateful for that, and we're staying on that trend this year. We're still seeing a reduction in motor vehicle thefts even in 2024. One of the areas that we really have been focusing on is around crime prevention and reduction through specified missions. And you've heard some discussions about these probably already if you've been paying attention to public safety conversation, particularly our stolen vehicle missions, which started up in 23. It's a data-driven approach, working with Oregon Health Sciences University, working with scientists up there to really help. What are some really common identifiers for potentially stolen cars? This has allowed us to be much more strategic in our approach around stolen vehicle missions, and where we don't have to just stop a bunch of cars, but we can be very specific in that. We did 19 of those missions in 2023 and did drive down stolen cars, as I mentioned earlier. We did 25 retail theft missions as well, illegal street takeovers, speed racing missions. This is where we're focusing on these specific problems. Conducted a number of human trafficking missions. This crime greatly impacts our neighborhood livability. We've also seen a real nexus to guns and drugs, and our human trafficking is emphasizing not on the people being trafficked, but on the buyers and on the people promoting and compelling prostitution. And we have a robust services outreach program, advocate program that works with those that are victims of trafficking. Shoplifting was up. We believe one of the reasons why shoplifting is up is because we've been engaging more with businesses, encouraging them to report more as we're addressing this. And we're trying to do our best to partner with stores most affected by this. We've used technology to try and help offset some of the other lack of resources. We started a drone program in the spring of 23. This use allows us to vastly decrease the amount of time it takes to investigate fatal traffic collisions, for example. The drone can fly over and map out the scene and give us really immediate, quick data that would normally take officers an extended period of time. This also helps free up personnel. It makes it safer for those on the scene. It also means we can reduce the time that a road or major thoroughfare may be closed. So we're continuing to advance that. Our drones are managed through the explosive disposal unit, which helps them to be more safer when they're out dealing with explosives. You may be aware we have a public-facing dashboard so community members can see the stats on the drones and the specifics. It's on our websites if you're curious. Maybe Kevin can put that in the chat. We have a very transparent program about how we're using drones and where we're deploying them and when. And we have an air support unit, continues to have a major impact on patrol. In 2023, we replaced our airplane. We had a plane that was built in 1978. We upgraded that to 2015. The air support unit responded to nearly 2,000 calls for service. With 1,200 of them really being that high priority. And we've assisted everything from captures of individuals to even firearms from up high. And then we were really encouraged to be able to return our traffic division after 2 years being on hiatus because of staffing levels. To have the traffic division back has been a real encouragement, both in the community as well as with the police bureau. As we look at our accomplishments around our relationship and community engagement, you may be aware, but body-worn cameras are being deployed bureau-wide. We're in the process right now of getting those all out. We did a pilot project in the August to October of 2023, and was very well received by the organization. Officers are grateful for the chance to finally get these. I was in one of the first community meetings in 2015 as we began this process of looking at body-worn cameras. So it's well over time that we get those. The final policy is published in 2024. Members have to read it and sign it, and then we'll get it through the precincts. And I think North has them or should have them. Commander Simon can touch on that, and then East still will get them soon, and the Tire Bureau should have them online by fall. We're excited for this to be fully implemented and believe the cameras will enhance the community-police relationship, and it's going to really provide all stakeholders with a greater deal of accountability, and I hope also provide a greater understanding and transparency to critical events. In the area of community engagement, our behavioral health unit continues to be a tremendous resource for the city. You can see there on the screen the number of meetings and trainings and outreaches they did last year. This is our unit that pairs an officer with a mental health professional. We expanded in our Office of Community Engagement. It continues to work to integrate the Bureau's bias crime unit with our advisory groups. We have several advisory groups. We have a very robust bias crimes unit. We take all bias crimes very seriously and conduct thorough investigations and work closely with our advisory groups. We have several advisory groups: a Latino advisory group, Muslim advisory group, Pacific Islander Asian advisory group, and others. This is really proven to be a successful model that improves crime prevention and the fear of crime, reducing the fear of crime, while also sharing about public awareness. Bias crimes, bias events can be difficult to understand, and the complexities that were shared with culturally specific groups, like I said earlier, that we rely upon to help us understand and best investigate those crimes. And finally, you notice that last bullet point around walking beats. We did this during the holiday season. It was one of my first priorities. I really believe in trying to get officers out of the cars and be engaged with the community. My direction in this time period was not to have this be enforcement based, but just to be engaged in walking around and connecting with community and learning and listening and going into restaurants and going into businesses. And we contacted somewhere north of about 5,000 plus people. We had over 223 PPB members who participated. I went out a couple of times. That visible presence can go a long way. We actually saw a very, very small sample size drop in crimes and reported crimes in the areas that we were walking. And we did this again in 2024 briefly, and I'm hoping to be able to continue this as we go, because the opportunity for community and for officers to just meet and engage in low stress, non-enforcement oriented ways is, I think, a real path forward to trust and legitimacy between everyone. So we're happy with the overall increase in visibility, especially during that busy time downtown. As we talk about organizational health, one of the areas that you've heard a lot about over the years is around staffing. In 2023, we hired 61 sworn members and 59 professional staff. And this included 11 public safety support specialists. We refer to our public safety support specialists as PS3s. Those are the alternative response model, unarmed, but can go out and facilitate for minor scene management, crime scene management, or traffic accidents, or take certain calls to offset the burden that might be placing on officers who can't get to calls. And we know that a lot of our calls that we get don't necessarily require an armed response, so we're continually evaluating that, making sure we're sending the best resource to the call. Our hiring remains consistent, and we're doing well compared to some of our regional partners who say they're really having difficulty attracting candidates. I'm proud of the work of our personnel division. And we received a little over 1,200 applications there for police officers in 2023. The state of Oregon, the governor had increased capacity at the academy. So now we're able to get people into the academy more on time, on a schedule, which previously, as you may be aware, officers would be hired by the police bureau, but they would have to sit and wait. And really good work by Governor Kotek and Director Castle down there to relieve that backlog so we can get folks in sooner, get them trained, and get them out on the street sooner. And also, it may seem small, but the records division filled a number of vacant positions. And I just want to highlight the records division. They do such important work. There's so many things that are happening behind the scenes with the police bureau. Our records division is filled with civilian staff, but they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we literally could not do our work without them. Somebody has to be able to capture the information, the reports, be able to respond to public records. Just really proud of the work that's being done in that division, as well as several other of our sort of behind the scenes divisions. We did some work around organizational health as far as our wellness program. We made some enhancements there. We hired an in-house mental health professional, so members have an opportunity to check in with a mental health professional during the week, can schedule appointments. That's all anonymous. We have trained some peer coaches in a variety of disciplines like financial responsibility or yoga or other ways to help officers and members, all members. This is available to everyone, stay healthy. And we've also done some work around the cardiac screening program. We're trying to stand something up through the medical system where we can help our officers and members get more information on their cardiac health, and really training folks to be able to deal with vicarious trauma and the impact that we know the job can have on folks over the years. Some of the challenges that we definitely want to identify. Crime statistics were down, and we're pleased with that, but they also remain higher when considering a 5-year look back. So, there's nobody on this call that's declaring victory or saying that this is that we are where we believe we need to be. Homicide rate did fall, but as you see in the 10 years prior, Portland averaged about 25 homicides a year. So that's still a big jump from where we are. We've made a big jump from where we are today. We want to continue to strive for those lower numbers. And then in our traffic area, one of the reasons why we brought the traffic division back is to try and impact these tragic loss of lives that we see on Portland streets. We also do this in cooperation with our partners at the Portland Bureau of Transportation. We try to focus on high crash areas, but the number of people dying in traffic crashes and pedestrians is really saddening, and just want you to know that it's a priority for us. In the area of narcotics, we've seen just a steady, disappointing increase in reported overdose deaths. These are just deaths that are reported to PPB. And you'll notice that, we nearly doubled in 2023 from 2022. And the numbers this year don't appear to be slowing down. I don't have those in front of me, but I know we continue to battle this heartbreaking challenge for our community. We remain really committed to using as many resources as we can. Our downtown bike team has been very instrumental. The governor has lent us the Oregon State Police to support our bike squad. And we're also working with our partners at OHSU and other social service providers to offer what support we can. So we're expanded our bike squad to afternoon shift. We are working with behavioral health specialists who are actually partnering with our bike squad downtown, and when possible, offering services to people who don't necessarily need enforcement but could use some help. This all goes towards, the visible presence we talked about earlier. The bike, similar to the walking beats, really puts people on the ground, puts them in connection with the community, and helps to change not only crime reduction, but that fear of crime as we are, more and more effort to personalize policing. And staffing continues to be a challenge for us. 2023, we were able to hire 72 sworn members, but we had 35 professional staff members retire. So with our hiring, we're basically sort of staying level right now. We have 2 big retirement waves this year with over 100 eligible members. Doesn't mean they're all going to retire, but I'm really hoping at the end of 24 we're going to be able to kind of start to build up some of our numbers. I anticipate right now we're right about that 810 number that you see on the screen, give or take. We are going to hire 10, I believe, on Thursday. So that's encouraging as people are continuing to seek out the Portland Police Bureau for employment. That total amount of officers that we're allowed to hire is 881, and that 881 includes everyone from my position down to the new officers we hire on Thursday. So we're roughly, give or take, about 80 positions short right now, and then about 100 of those that are part of the 800 are in some form of training. So we continue to try and overcome the loss of several hundred officers over the last few years, but I'm really optimistic and hopeful that the good work our personnel division is moving us forward. And then you'll see that last bullet point around facilities. Many of our facilities are outdated. They don't meet basic safety standards for earthquakes or emergency response for an emergency facility. So that continues to be a priority. And the city has a master public safety plan they're trying to work through to shore up to make sure that our facilities are up to date and safe to handle the needs of the police bureau and the community. Training is of huge significance. We put a high emphasis and a high priority on it. And that's always one of those critical parts of our learning. In 2023, we hired a new civilian education director, Dr. Rebecca Rodriguez. Dr. Rodriguez has had an immediate positive impact on the division and the Bureau with a greater focus on adult learning principles and also the creation of instructor development course. Really grateful for her. All of our full-time instructors will be expected to attend that course going forward. She comes from academia. She's got an extensive background and has just really been a benefit to the Police Bureau and the quality of training that we're now delivering. Training has a number of academies throughout the year. They're kind of occurring at any given time, sometimes for new police officers, sometimes for recruits that are in our advanced academies, sometimes cadets, public safety sports support specialists I mentioned earlier, specialized training, etc. We also have a 2-day in-service training for all sworn members and sworn supervisors and command. So we're constantly trying to touch the whole organization when it comes to training. Our learning management system is online, and we're able to put out videos and legal updates and directives and policies. Along with our video production unit, we can produce videos highlighting clarifications. For example, we put some out around our directive on consent searches, which we'll talk about shortly. So we're using all of our resources to try and support and enhance the training and the quality of training we're giving our members every day. I want to touch on certainly the topic of force. This is of significance for the community. I talk regularly about how the Police Bureau is part of the community. Our actions have a direct impact on each other. And so there's always a couple things to touch on. We really spend a tremendous amount of that time and training effort to ensure our uses of force are appropriate and that we hold officers accountable when they act outside of policy. We like to emphasize our overarching principle regarding the use of appropriate and constitutional force. Sort of comes in that small portion of the policy statement you can see at the bottom of the screen, but I'm going to read it just for emphasis. The community expects and the Portland Police Bureau requires that members use only the objectionable reasonable force necessary to perform their duties and overcome the threat of resistance or the subject under the totality of the circumstances. There were 4 uses of deadly force in 2023. All 4 were fatal. Once again, we sadly acknowledge that fact, as every life is important. We understand certainly how the application of deadly force can impact our community. These cases are looked at thoroughly, not just by PPB, but we partner with other law enforcement agencies, the district attorney's office. At times, the district attorney's office has used the Oregon DOJ in all uses of deadly force. There's a very stringent process that's followed. The district attorney has overall authority for that, and that's also reflected in our primary directive 1010.10. We continue to be transparent. You can find our summaries of these incidents and every deadly force incident since 2010 on our website. I encourage you to look those up on the data portal. And once again, maybe Kevin can give you a link to that. Officers initiated a high number of calls in 2023. There were officer-initiated calls was about just over 55,000. You see on your screen. Force was used in 0.4% of these calls. Community members, visitors, they initiated about 210, 213. You see on your screen there calls for service in 2023. Force was used in 0.19 of these calls. So although those numbers are low and reflect a high deal of restraint, professionalism, we carefully evaluate each use of force to make sure that it's within policy and standards and expectations of the Police Bureau and of those that we serve. These numbers are also available on the website on the open data portal. We have different categories outlining the level of force. And from category 4 up into category 1. Category 4 force is used to establish control of a resistant person. So this force is not reasonably likely to cause persistent pain or physical injury. This might be somebody who's being handcuffed and is just resistant to being handcuffed, pushing back on the officer or trying to pull their hands apart. Ultimately, they're handcuffed without any kind of extensive force or injury. And we could spend a lot of time on this tonight, but we are changing our review process of category 4 reporting. We work closely with the Department of Justice on this conversation. The review process was very cumbersome, very time consuming. And with the onboarding of body-worn cameras, many of the things we were investigating around category 4 force, we can now capture with the cameras. I want to be really clear that this will still be documented force. There is no shortcut here as far as whether or not we will record this and document it. Sergeants will be reviewing these on a case-by-case basis. We've been really doing this because we see there's an opportunity here to free up officer and supervisory time to be more engaged with the community, more responsive to calls for service. Many of our category force uses of force were so minor, but the amount of effort and time spent on the review process was really bogging us down. So it'll all be documented. And really, this is going to be more in line with national best practices. Many of the agencies we've looked at across the country have done the same thing. And there is a video and an analysis that was done that illustrates the reason for this change, and it's on our website. I encourage you to watch it. So we could spend more time on this. Maybe we'll come back in the Q&A, but there's a video on our website that sort of outlines how we got here and why we're making this change. So we will be recording and documenting the force. It's just the review process that has changed. We also have our website has our stops data. And I really want to commend the Portland Police Bureau. We're one of the few agencies that I've identified around the country, and there certainly may be others because there's a lot of police departments, but we have had a longstanding history of publishing our stops data report, and the 2023 annual stops data report was published last month. It's available on our website. In 2023, officers performed, as you can see on the slide there, a little over 17,000 driver stops. And that's about a 26% increase. We believe that's likely due to the addition of the traffic division. Stops performed by personnel other than the traffic division was about 10,536. So they stayed, 10,684. So the stops in 2023 from units outside of the traffic division stayed roughly about the same, but the overall increase is likely attributed to our traffic division. When we talk about the stops performed by personnel assigned to units other than traffic division or static, personnel officers from the Specialized Resource Division, which we also have a team called the Focus Intervention Team, FIT. Focus Intervention Team were the only other unit to conduct a sizable number of stops in 2023. Our Focus Intervention Team is largely emphasis on gun violence and reducing gun violence. 97.8% of the drivers, as you can see on there, were stopped for traffic reasons alone, with speeding as the primary offense. Then there's a percentage there that were also stopped for missing or expired license violations. In some of these cases, the predominant reason for non-traffic personnel drivers stopping were in these non-traffic related matters. Like I said, missing or expired license plates. Drivers perceived to be Black or African American were significantly more likely to be stopped for non-moving violations by non-traffic personnel than other perceived racial or ethnic groups. I believe there is a correlation between the stops and the work the Focus Intervention Team is asked to do to combat gun violence. But we are continuing to engage not only with those officers, but with our community oversight group. We have a group called the Community Oversight Group, COG, and other stakeholders who work closely with the Focus Intervention Team. We've had numerous meetings with them and going over the data, looking for trends or similarities or things that need to be addressed. In 2023, approximately 1 out of every 125 stops, or 0.8% of all stops performed by Bureau members on drivers, also included a discretionary search. So less than 1% of the stops in 2023 involved a discretionary search. Non-traffic officers perform the bulk of searches associated with driver stops. And that's, once again, primarily our Focused Intervention Team. I've got one more slide on stops data regarding search rate. The 2023 search rate is the lowest on record for the Portland Police Bureau. Stops and searches are governed by the U.S. and state constitution as well as Oregon law. We are continuing to discuss with community members their rights and responsibilities that when stopped, community members have responsibility to comply with the officer's direction. And I just want to take a minute and pause here for a second. We're going to talk about consent searches in a second, but a lot of awareness and interest around stops data and making sure that we are 100% committed to bias-free policing. And that continues to be a priority for all of us. And I'm so grateful for the community oversight group and other advisory groups that have been leaning in and helping us to understand what those expectations are so that we can continue to meet the high demands and expectations of the community. As we talk about consent searches in 2022, PPB implemented a new practice to ensure compliance. Officers create a record of their request to search and provide a written explanation of that right. Our policy actually goes beyond state law. We require officers to provide a card that explains in 5 different languages a person's right to refuse to consent to search. And this card explains to people that they have the right to say no when asked for consent to search and to withdraw their consent at any time during the search. And these steps, still do not affect the existing authority to conduct a search without consent. If an officer has a legal basis to search a person or their car, then the officer may do so, even if the person refuses to give consent. So we're really emphasizing the rights and responsibilities that individuals have to be able to deny a consent search. If we have probable cause to make the search or legal basis to make the search, then we're going to go ahead and do that regardless of consent. All of this stops data information can definitely raise questions around bias-free policing due to the disparities. We have directives, training. We spent a lot of time on this conversation. It's not a perfect model for capturing the information that we're trying to capture, but know that we are, being very transparent and public about that and working with numerous community advisory groups to make sure that we are policing in an equitable and transparent way. I really hope this information has been helpful. I hope it gives you a better understanding of the Police Bureau, of the various things that occurred in 2023, some of the work that's been done and what remains to be done to address crime, concerns, trust, and livability. I encourage you to get involved. You're doing that tonight. I'm so grateful for that. There's neighborhood groups and associations. Really stay informed on PPB news, budget updates, open data, etc. We're always welcome any words and encouragement, support, and critique. Please reach out, and we still need your help. We're really continuing to try and grow the organization, and you can really be some of our best recruiters. So proud of the diversity of hires we've done in the last year. Individuals of all backgrounds and experiences really help provide our agency good opportunity to provide success for our community. I said that was a lot of information. Once again, I apologize, but I'm going to turn it over to Commander Simon, and then we'll get to your questions and answers. Thanks for your patience in that. Rob?
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. And I will continue on with the trend of a lot of information in a short amount of time. I believe Kevin has a PowerPoint for me to bring up here.
Yeah, Terry will bring that up for you in just a second.
So while you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Rob Simon. I'm the commander of North Precinct. I've been with the Police Bureau now for coming up on 23 years this late fall. As the chief had mentioned, this one over at St. John's Bridge.
Yeah, sometimes the share function is challenging. So I believe that's coming up. Did we lose Commander Simon? I see him on there.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, you are still here. Okay. Just making sure.
I was just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, Rob, if it's going to be a couple minutes here, oh, looks like we're getting started there. Maybe.
Yeah, I do not have access to the PDF, so Terry will get it up. It's a little bit of moving stuff around.
Why don't we take one of those early questions, Kev? If there's a question that we can take while we're waiting for this to pop up.
Absolutely. The first one that came up back in the beginning of your presentation, Chief, you had mentioned about your goals, your personal goals for the Bureau. And the question was, what about the goals of transparency and accountability? So maybe talk a little bit about not only your personal goals and how that is different than the Bureau's overall mission, values, and goals that's spelled out in policy.
Yeah, that's a great question. And oh, there it is. I'll answer this and I'll turn it over to you, Rob. That's a great question. And that was an emphasis of mine, certainly when I started. That's a personal belief that I have around transparency and accountability. And I have really attempted to move the organization that way in terms of information sharing and being candid in our response to, questions and answers, input, incidents, et cetera. But as I came out with that early, and then as I evaluated, as Kevin just said, sort of a more holistic, from a mission-oriented policy perspective, I wanted to have something that's more tangible. Those three goals all require action. I believe that our behaviors demonstrate our values. People are less inclined about what we intend, and they're more interested on what we do. And so rest assured that transparency and accountability continue to be critical in all that we do and say within the organization and how we do our work. But I felt like those three goals were goals that the organization could grab onto in a tangible way. I could provide some structure and then embed transparency and accountability and others, humility, curiosity, other values into that, while expecting myself and members to meet these three goals. So thanks for that. Rob?
Apologize for the technical difficulties. I think they're trying to merge the Chief's present PowerPoint and mine as well. So looks like we're on the right track. So as I said before, I've been with the Police Bureau now for I'm coming up on my 23rd year here. Be this fall, be 23 years on the Bureau. I've been here at the precinct now since late January of 23. So I'm right about a year and a half my time at the Bureau. And then slide 2. When I was assigned here, I got to work trying to fine tune and push the precinct outwardly. As the chief had mentioned, one of his goals is getting people out of their cars and back out on the street. We still had some lingering effects from 2020 here for a number of reasons. And one of my primary focuses is on changing that. This newly created map here we made to create for officers to know what parts of their districts fit into the neighborhood associations. Oftentimes, officers have to move around district assignments, and we wanted to make sure that they understood what districts they were working in, to understand the neighborhood associations that they're also part of, to try to make it one kind of homogeneous collection. For those unfamiliar with the precinct, North Precinct is by far the largest of the 3 precincts in Portland. We cover 58.6 square miles. It goes all the way from the end of St. John's into Linton, all the way up Highway 30 into Linton, all the way to Gresham along Marine Drive and Sandy Boulevard. It's a mix of event centers, including the Moda Center, Memorial Coliseum, Convention Center, Expo, Portland Airport. The Portland Airport's carved out there in white intentionally because they have their own agency. However, most calls outside the terminal we end up being involved in. We also have some very high volume business areas, which we'll talk about in a bit. Cascade Station, Jansen Beach Shopping Centers, the Lloyd District. North Precinct consists of over 30 neighborhood associations, and a large industrial area is also part of our precinct, both to the north and to the west with Swan Island. And those are kind of the edge of our precinct boundaries. Our third slide, kind of our highest kind of call load districts, getting a little specific on the districts. Is the Lloyd area, which is our 590s, 690s, and 670s districts. Park Rose and Coley, we seem to see a high volume of call for service, as well as the Jansen Beach area. One of the changes that I made when I got here is I wanted to make sure we had long-term district officers in all of those districts. Being the busiest districts, I want to make sure we had people who were here long-term and committed to the precinct. So we've done that now. It helps, the community know the officers. It helps to be a familiar face to the public. That officer will also know problem locations and know areas, kind of hotspots within the precinct. They'll be familiar with upcoming events. Like next week, there's an Olivia Rodrigo concert at the Moda Center, which will have a huge teenage person attendance. So I want our officers to know that when that's happening, so they can be out there kind of when the show lets out, so it can be a visible presence outside on the grounds around the Moda Center. My work prior to being here at North Precinct has kind of always been a proactive officer. One of the things I'm proud of at the precinct is that we have increased our self-initiated work. That work the chief was talking about getting out of your car, interacting with the community. In 2022, about 12.5% of our calls that we created were self-initiated. In 2023, we're up to about 17.6%, which is about a 5.1% increase in our total calls is self-initiated activities, officers getting out of their cars, talking to the public and interacting with them. In total call volume, that's actually about a 30% increase in self-initiated activity. That's a statistic that I was digging through our Tableau dashboard and found, and I was pretty happy with that, seeing that. In 23, our neighborhood response team, our NERT team, was completely overturned to a whole new team, a new sergeant, 4 new officers with a more focused and direct approach. We kind of blended it as a command team here at the precinct. We wanted an idea of kind of a proactive street crime team mixed with a neighborhood livability team. That's what that team has been so far this year, and they've been great. They're kind of the leaders for our missions. They're the leaders. They go to a lot of community meetings for us. They've been a really great team for us in 23. We try to be very intentional with staffing here at North Precinct. We're short staffed on officers, but we're trying to utilize the officers that we have assigned here to make sure we're maximizing efficiency and pushing the officers to get out of their cars and be visible to the public. Some real quick on crime trends. Stolen vehicles continue to be on the decline. Now I know the chief's number was about 25%. My number is a little skewed because it's just North Precinct, and I push it into 24 by accident. I just looked at my little tab I was pulling off of. So my number, the chief's number is obviously probably more accurate. Mine is a little more North Precinct specific. But we are continuing to be in a downward trend statistically. Shooting incidents are down in the precinct. As for instance, in 21 and 22, we had about 505 shootings per year on average. In 2023, we had about a reported 375 shootings. We talked about that in a positive light, but as the chief has mentioned, it's not lost on neither he nor I that 375 reported shots fired incidents is too many in one precinct or one city. And some of the mission-specific staffing we've done is to kind of focus on that lately. We've been partnering with our focused intervention team to do some intentional missions in those problematic areas that we see a lot of gun violence. As the chief had also mentioned, shoplifting. Shoplifting reports are up significantly. For us in North Precinct, we're fairly positive that is just due because our NERT team goes out and they contact these businesses. They encourage the loss prevention teams to make reports, to frequently make reports of the chronic offenders so we can amass a lot of cases where if you have a chronic shoplifter who's committed 35 shoplifts and eventually we can arrest them, we can aggregate all those cases together and to solve a lot of crimes sort of in one foul swoop with those. So I think that is a significant reason why the reporting is up so much. One thing we're also here doing at North Precinct is to try to help with to continue those crime trends is applying for grants, both on the federal and state level. Currently in North Precinct, we're in the process of applying for a retail theft grant, a gun violence grant, and then multiple street takeover street racing grants. So those are things that will give us the ability to hire officers in overtime to engage in these proactive work out on the street and to continue those crime trends for us. one of the calling cards for North Precinct. It's kind of known amongst the other precincts. We have a lot of camaraderie between the precincts, and we're all one of the things we work on too is kind of these partner-based missions. I'm sure most people have seen the videos from all over the West Coast on street takeover events happening. For Portland, most of those events tend to start here in North Precinct. A lot of it happens in our industrial areas, and it flows into our residential or commercial areas. Those events pose serious risk to the community for a multitude of reasons. The missions that we're doing with those are resource intensive. They require a lot of officers. And oftentimes we put out calls for partner agencies to come help us to address those. In 2023, we did a lot of work with our human trafficking detail as well, focusing on visible street prostitution activity. Those missions a lot of times become weather-based because the visibility significantly increases when the weather changes, and our missions causes significant impact to that type of activity on the street. The chief did mention the walking beats. We've continued the walking beat initiative that he put out in the fall from our day shift officers that are out there walking around. And then another focus of the effort around this mission work that I've been talking about is retail theft, crime reduction, and very recently we set up a small bike detail that's out there as often as we can get them. As a precinct, we ramped up our missions, our retail theft missions significantly beginning in March of 23. First, focusing on the major chain stores like the Fred Meyers and Home Depots of the world. And now we focus mostly on groups of stores like a Jansen Beach Shopping Center, the Hollywood neighborhood with New Seasons and Fred Meyers there, Cascade Station, Delta Park, and then now into St. John's with their Fred Meyers and stores down there. Another type of mission that we run, it's highlighted there in the slide, is a crime reduction mission, we call it. It's sort of a choose your own adventure for our teams of sorts. For these missions, North Precinct members partner with other bureau units. And then when we do partner with, for example, the Focus Intervention Team, that team focuses primarily on gun violence. That group of officers will go to where that type of activity has been most frequently occurring. If we partner with East Precinct, which has become a new thing for our night shift officers, that team then will go to work the border with East Precinct along Northeast 82nd Avenue. So we try to run the missions, well, as most of my staff can attest, I push for the missions almost daily. Sometimes reality sits in for staffing for us, and we try to run multiple missions a week. But we're pushing the foot down the gas pedal for proactive work. We recently have started small, what we're calling mini shift missions, where a sergeant picks an area to work, pulls cops out of districts to try to focus on specific problem areas within the precinct. Some of the side effect of that, though, it does affect our call response time for our low priority calls, which is unfortunate, but it's sort of unavoidable at times to make sure that we're trying to be out there doing what we need to do as far as the mission work goes. So in slide number 6, we towards the end of 2023, North Precinct stood up what we call an outreach car. I had spent a long time of my career at Central Precinct. For several years there, we had a dedicated outreach car to work with our city partners in an attempt to try to mitigate some of the impacts of outdoor camping has caused for the city. When this dedicated Central Precinct car ended in 2020, after me seeing its success, it was one of those things that I said, you know, if I become a decision maker at one point in my career, I will bring back the outreach car. And I'm fortunate that the chief has left me in this position where I'm still a decision maker for North Precinct, and we've now set up an outreach car here at the precinct. That outreach car works with the Street Services Coordination Center to try to reduce the impact of sometimes the unsightliness of living outside. North officers work to speed up the workflow of the SSCC, working with PBOT, trying to move some of the most deplorable living conditions we see on the streets. These two pictures are perfect examples of cleanups we just did. One being right in the middle of the neighborhood on the left, and the other one being a sort of functioning water heater tank with several car batteries hooked to it, which was a quite dangerous situation. We had to call hazmat out to remove. That outreach car works to facilitate housing access and treatment for individuals who want help through the SSCC. Just want to real quick circle back to the precinct itself, just for a few minutes. North Precinct currently has 74 deployable officers. We have 18 sergeants assigned here. 3 lieutenants, we have a captain position, and I'm the commander of the precinct. Our neighbor response team is made up of 1 sergeant, 4 officers, and the 2 outreach cars, or 2 outreach officers. Then we have a New Columbia detail, which primarily focuses in the Portsmouth neighborhood. They're a contracted team that works with Home Forward to try to address the needs of that community down there. North Precinct, the building physically is also the house to our Specialized Resources Division, our tactical teams, our crisis response team, as well as our enhanced community safety team and our focused intervention team all work out of this building. One of the things I focused on when I got here, and I put this picture in here intentionally, that we're still on 7, is I wanted to focus and make sure that the building still showed damage from 2020 when I got here, which still has some lingering thoughts for both the community and our officers. And trying to get past that kind of mindset, we did a lot of repair work, including new paint, awnings, and some much needed internal work. And as the chief had mentioned, body-worn camera systems, those had just gone live for us last week, and we started those Monday, have hit the streets now. So it's a learning process, trying to get up to speed with the body-worn camera system, make sure we're complying with policy. And it's a whole new process for us, but we're engaged in it. I'll finish with this last slide, then we'll go back to Kevin. I'll just say that, our members respond to the community on people's worst days of their lives. As you can see here, Sergeant Taylor is talking to a gentleman on the railing of the Broadway Bridge, and that person is having probably the worst day of his life. Fortunately, that call ended greatly. One of her strongest suits is she is able to talk to people, and she talked that young fellow from off the bridge railing. It was great. We go from that call, people in the worst of their lives, to a call, the slide on the right, where Officer Dobbs is handing out stickers to kids in New Columbia who wanted to have a dance party in the Christmas lights of the police cars, which was a pretty fun time. So I am thankful to work with the men and women of the Police Bureau. I'm thankful that there's so many members of the community and neighborhood associations here present with you, and I thank you guys for making the time tonight.
All right, thank you, Commander. Now is the chance to open it up for questions. For those that are on the presentation today and may have missed the very beginning, the way we're doing questions is in the chat. So if you just open up the chat in your Teams view there, and then you can type in anything that occurs to you, and I will do my best to direct it to the right person or persons. We have some great questions already lined up, so thank you, everybody. Still have 28 people in this presentation, so lots of opportunities for questions, and we still have plenty of time. So the first question I think probably should go to Commander Simon, but I'm sure the Chief Day may want to weigh in as well. It's just about the Lloyd Center. There were some recent shootings and a homicide in the Lloyd Center last week, and she's just asking to share your thoughts and planned response for that recent violence.
Well, I mean, honestly, if I wish I knew the answer to why it's happening, I would solve that elixir. I would have that magic elixir. I think a lot of us in the city would agree with that. But well, it's a challenging area. It's a thoroughfare with the TriMet going through there. Holiday Park draws some attention. As the Chief Day had mentioned, the afternoon bike shifts, afternoon bike squad downtown has pushed a lot of people involved in the drug trade across the river into the Lloyd area. And so I would say that is probably the biggest concern sometimes for us when we see that. Actually, tonight they're doing a mission down there starting in about a half an hour in and around Elliott neighborhood, moving into the Lloyd Center area. So we're definitely trying to ramp up enforcement. Anytime those type of incidents happen where there's a loss of life or there's a shooting or a violent incident, we try to respond to it and up our game and up our service to that part of the community. And so we're trying to pivot and move resources to that area to focus on tonight.
And I just would add to Commander Simon's comments, the degree of violence that we're seeing in our community, as well as the guns that we're seizing in preventing violence, is really is saddening and surprising. Nearly all of these missions that we work, whether it be human trafficking or street racing or retail theft or stolen vehicles, etc., we're generally seeing firearms on people that we're contacting. So we're really being intentional about our effort to get firearms off the streets. And that's not, the only answer, but that definitely is something we're focusing on, as well as, regularly doing our best to use a data-informed approach. What are the indicators? What are the information that we need to be looking at to try and make sure that we are contacting the right people in the right place at the right time. We don't have the resources all the time, and it's not good policing. It's not equitable policing to just take a kind of everybody gets stopped kind of attitude. We really try to be able to articulate, hey, here's the reasons behind it, here's what we're thinking, and be able to support that with the data and information that's provided.
Very good. Thanks, Chief. Next question is actually a good point. We had talked about the drone program during the presentation, and we kind of emphasized, of course, that we use the drones for traffic crashes and as a quick way to scan a scene and get roads back open. And we talked about there are some other uses, but we didn't really get into it. Chief, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the other ways that we're using unmanned aerial devices and how that's shown to be helpful to the Bureau in doing our work.
As I mentioned earlier, some of the really highly threatening, dangerous situations, our explosive disposal unit can use them to, look at devices, maybe enter into scenes that are not necessarily safe or ready and contained. Can really help cut down on some of the risk if we have that some of these drones now are the size they can go into a home and search the home without having to risk entering officers in there and having a conflict. So right now we're using them, primarily in investigative purposes, and then when we have really high risk situations to try and minimize the risk to everyone involved. It's not just about minimizing the risk to police, but to community. And the technology is advancing so quickly, and the ability to communicate even through the drones now is another added benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go on, I put in the chat a link to the dashboard. It actually has a list of all of the uses. So we're really emphasizing being transparent on how these devices are being used. And some of them are as simple as, we're looking for an armed suspect, and having that eye in the air can make things much more safer for not only the officers on the scene, but the community in general. Hopefully allow us to locate dangerous suspects quickly. So you can check out the link in the chat to that, or it's just right on our homepage. So you can see how those are being utilized. Next question, this is also one for Chief Day. The question is about the property crimes unit. There's some concern about that property crimes are not getting due attention. Something that I know that Chief Day has talked about quite a bit. So, Chief, if you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on addressing property crimes, specifically with regard to having detectives assigned to them.
Yeah, so several years ago, we had a property crimes unit. These are detectives who specialize in burglary or white collar fraud crimes or other, property oriented crimes. And due to the depletion in resources, that unit eventually went away. But we did assign a detective to each precinct, and each precinct had a detective who was there to support the precinct officers. Sometimes that would involve following up and investigating property crimes. Other times that would investigate minor assaults or whatever, sort of a catch-all. So we have not had a specific property crimes dedicated unit for several years. Recently, we had a slew of retirements, and we saw a loss in our detective ranks, specifically in the area of child abuse and elder abuse and domestic violence. So we pivoted a couple of those detectives to that role, I believe in prioritizing those crimes, as well as a detective to our sexual assault detail. That is certainly a disappointment because we would really love to have kept them in the precincts. And we have given the precincts, Commander Simon and other precinct commanders, the autonomy to be able to take an officer, if available, and create an acting detective position where, they may want to do follow-up on a particular crime or reported problem. And we would hope to be able to offer support through our detective division to these officers as a chance to develop them and help them grow into the positions. I'm looking closely at our staffing numbers. I'm hoping that by the end of the year, we can promote some new detectives. And then we will also have a brand new detective assessment process after the first of the year, which will give us some more people to draw on. And we just are going to be continuing to advocate for the expanding of PPB so that we can fill some of these much needed positions. So yes, there is a slight decrease of emphasis on property crimes, but it's not as if they will just be ignored. And we will have some resources available to try and address that. But I really felt the urgency around domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, and sexual assault needed to be the priority right now.
I love this next question. One of our longtime community involved citizens was attended this year after year, and has previously asked Chief Lavelle about his thoughts on opening up additional precincts. So Chief Day, if you would talk a little bit about your thoughts on any goals on opening up previously closed precincts, or perhaps even opening additional neighborhood, smaller precincts around the city.
Yeah, I definitely don't believe that the current configuration is really properly serving the city. When I started my career in 1990, I worked out of St. John's, 7214 North Philadelphia. Loved that community out there. It was definitely a tie to the police in that community. It was really a loss when we had to vacate that. I think I have a vision going forward in this new model of city government. We're going to have 4 districts, and I think we should have a precinct in each district. You're going to have 3 council people from each district. They're going to be, responding to the needs and the concerns of their community. And I think a precinct in each district would really go a long ways towards developing those community relationships, because Portland is very diverse in terms of the issues and challenges that we face as a city, and specifically in policing. Just geography alone, if you look at the geography of East Precinct, for example, 122nd or 82nd versus a geography in North Portland, or on St. John's, or Southwest or Northwest. I mean, then you start to look at other environmental issues like, the buildings downtown, high rises that you don't have in other parts of the city. And then, just community expectations and needs. And we do see different trends. Different parts of the city have different levels of violence and different crime-related issues. So I think we need to have a more strategic, intentional approach to where the precincts are. We used to have 3. We started with 3. We went to 5. We went back to 3. And I really think a model where we can have 1 in each district would be a really worthy goal, and give our new council people a chance to connect with their local departments in their districts.
This is a kind of a multi-part question about crime data, or data available on our website. And so, Chief, if you would just talk a little bit about your thoughts on releasing information about internal affairs investigations and the results of internal investigations on officers.
Yeah, there's a report that comes out that does have some information in this area. It's typically not maybe as detailed as some would want. And I understand the concern around officer accountability. There's a couple of factors that go into internal affairs investigations that I'm always want to be mindful of. One is certainly we want to be respectful of everyone involved. So the investigation, and we want to be sensitive to the needs of the community and the interest in transparency, but we also want to make sure that we're not embarrassing the officer or shaming the officer particularly they've already been through a discipline process. We want to respect the discipline process. We also want to work closely with our labor organizations. And so we have some agreements with them in regards to the information that we can and are willing to share. I know, once again, as I said, these cases are significant, and I'm always open to being able to put more data out there as it relates to them. But for right now, we're trying to continue to find a way to build that out. I don't know. Does that answer the question, or you need a little more detail, Kevin?
Yeah, Dan, if there's more that you need on that, then certainly enter it into the chat. The other questions about data available on traffic stops. I think the chief did talk quite a bit about the stops data report, and that is available online. So that is available to you. And also interactions with houseless people. I know that the city does a lot of statistical releases on the city's website. As you know, the houseless problem and interactions with houseless folks is not just a police bureau uh, duty, but also something that we work with other city bureaus on. And so I think a lot of those statistics are available elsewhere on the website. Next question is about the about non-emergency wait times. I guess the question would be, Chief, are you concerned about the wait times with regard to calling for police? Obviously, I'm sure that most of you know that the 911 system is separate from the police bureau, but we certainly work really closely with the Bureau of Emergency Communication. So, Chief, would you just talk about your thoughts on people calling for the police?
Yeah, so certainly the wait times are unacceptable. I mean, there's a customer service component to our response times that's so important. And when people call, have a reasonable expectation that somebody will respond in a timely manner. There's a challenge with that, and once again, as we look at staffing, the amount of people that we have available to respond to those calls, as well as the calls that we're taking today, are far more complex than they've been historically. We're seeing many examples of co-occurring disorders such as behavioral health, mental health, and addiction, where people have some really challenging issues to work through. They're not simple by any means. So we're finding that our time spent on some of these calls for service requires us to be there longer as we de-escalate, as we seek out other resources to resolve the problem. And also, some of them are requiring more officers to respond. If we have a shooting scene or some of these other scenes, then there is a need for more officers to be able to contain the crime scene and hold it and so forth. So those are some of the challenges. Another challenge that I don't think we've been mindful of is just as natural as it feels to have a cell phone in our hand. I don't know about many, but certainly some of us on this call can remember before the days of cell phones. And if you needed a response from public safety, you would go down to the payphone and call 911. If you were driving down the road and you had a problem, you had to make a determination. Were you going to stop and maybe help somebody who was broken down, or would you go down to the exit and tell somebody to call 911? Well, nowadays, with that instant access in our hand to a public service such as 911, we see our calls for service have grown over the years. And so not only do we have calls that are more complex, they're more time consuming, they require a greater number of officers, but we're also seeing an increased amount of them. So this really forces us to triage and try and manage the high risk calls for service, and then get to the other ones as time allows. Some of the things we're working on in this regard, I do think our online reporting system could be improved, and we're looking at other online reporting systems. I think we're working with BOEC, that's the dispatch center that Kevin mentioned, to try and do a better job of identifying call types to make sure that we're dispatching the appropriate call to the appropriate resource. So we're doing a long-term study with them that I hope we have wrapped up at the end of the year that might provide some efficiencies. We ran a pilot project with a sergeant assigned up at the 911 center. Normally officers are not there. Those are run by civilians, and have a sergeant up there to look at calls to better help prioritize, as well as get back to community members if we're going to be delayed or not be able to provide them that service in that time that they're expecting it. So we are constantly evaluating our response times. And although they are a metric, they're not the only metric that demonstrates whether we're being effective in our outreach. Because as I said earlier about the uniquenesses of precincts, call times are also impacted by geography. They're impacted by time of day, by traffic patterns, and other issues that can come up that are out of our control. So we're always looking at it. I'm sorry. I'd love to get them down to a more reasonable number, and that is the goal. And part of that's going to be associated with as we increase the number of officers working on the street.
The next question actually is about online reporting. And Chief, if you mentioned it, sorry, I missed it because I'm also reading. Have you considered, well, the writer or the questioner is asking about or saying that there have been additional types of crimes that can be reported on our website, and there has been improvements in the online reporting system. He's asking if you're interested, Chief, in adding additional crimes that can be made online.
Yes, thank you. The suggestion box is open, is what I would say. You know, we are constantly looking for chances to be able to streamline and streamline that process. You know, ideally, I would want everyone to be able to talk to a member of the organization. I think that human contact is so important. But given the volume and size, I think we have to definitely look at technology and the options it can provide to give that service if we're not able to in person.
Absolutely. I know you talked about staffing before. There's a question about, when can retailers expect to see more officers available to respond to 911 and non-emergency calls? It's certainly hard to quantify, Chief, but maybe just reiterate a little bit more about the efforts to kind of expand the Bureau and hire additional resources.
Yeah, and specific to retail and retail theft, we're going to continue to do our retail theft missions. Those are not going away, and Commander Simon can certainly speak to them. His precinct has been the city leader in this conversation. So we're going to continue to focus on that. As we talked earlier about the property crime, that means some of the more long-term detailed theft investigations may take a while to get to, but we're going to continue to be focused on this. And then, as Kevin said, I really see an opportunity for us in the next couple of years to increase the authorized strength of the organization and get us back to appropriate staffing levels. The Police Bureau for many years was 1,000 plus sworn members. As I said earlier today, it's hovering around 800 more or less. And West Coast cities our size, we should be substantially higher than that. So we just need to continue to have the conversation and look for funding resources and opportunities to grow the Bureau so we can fill some of these vacancies. But in the meantime, we're 100% committed to doing the best job with what we have. I don't want staffing to be an excuse. I really believe that we need to be accountable and do the work right now with the people we have to the best of our ability. But I will continue to advocate for growing the size of the Police Bureau.
Commander Simon, I know that you did talk a little bit about those missions with regard to retail theft. Maybe go into a little bit more detail, if you would, please, on the progression, like what you've learned is working best over the months and really years that North Precinct has really led the way on retail theft missions and how effective they can be.
Well, what's worked best for us is having a great relationship with the loss prevention staff of that store. If that store has the policies in place and the staff available to help us in these missions, that's the biggest thing. When we first started working with the Fred Meyers and the Home Depot, those were those stores that have the robust loss prevention services. They have the policies in place. They already have the ability to email directly the reports to the DA's office. That was a very smooth process and transition for us. as we've gotten a little more advanced in what we're doing, we're trying to help the stores create those policies to just be similar to the bigger stores, and how we can, a lot of it comes down to the relationships. If the store is very reach out to us and they want us to come help, we try to come help. That's our response to it. If I go to a neighborhood association meeting and the retailers are talking about how their stores have been hammered, that's where we respond to. So it's that outreach from the community to us, and then we respond and try to help them try to meet their needs.
Yeah, very good. This kind of dovetails on that question as well, about are there any opportunities for retailers to get involved with PPB on community outreach and involvement? Like basically, Commander, how do they get a hold of you?
We have North Precinct members attend virtually every one of the neighborhood association meetings that we're invited to. Kevin, you can put my email in the chat. They can email me directly. We attend all of the PMO meetings, which is the public meetings held by the mayor's office, where it invites all the different city safety groups together to talk with residents and neighbors, as well as businesses that come to that. We meet regularly with a lot of the business down in the Lloyd district at their monthly business meeting to kind of have that connection with their security and services meeting for all of the Lloyd district. So we're very much involved in that, as well as just email me directly with the specific needs, and I can get that addressed.
All right, very good. And I did enter your email in the chat. So if you're interested in connecting directly with Commander Simon and his staff, that's a good way to do it. Next question is about the wait for the sobering center to open. Chief Day, I know this is an issue you've been involved with for years now. How is PPB addressing issues with regard to sobering without having a sobering center being available? And what are we going to be doing for the period of time between now and when we do get a center open?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we're, continue to be challenged to find a place for these vulnerable members of our population that are suffering from intoxication, unable to care for themselves. And unfortunately, there's been a heavy reliance both upon emergency rooms and upon jail when there's crimes related to that. So we're really trying to partner with the county. The ultimate responsibility for mental health and behavioral health lies with Multnomah County. So we are encouraging them to, be really intentional about getting this sobering center stepped up. So we have a place we can take people who are not in need of jail. It's not a good use of our medical facility. And unfortunately, the level of acuity for these folks really runs the gamut from very complacent and docile to highly violent and aggressive. And not because of any fault of their own, but because of the disorder or crisis that they're experiencing. And so we're going to need a very comprehensive approach to be able to manage all these different folks on the spectrum, to be able to get them the services and assessments that they need. So I'm cautiously hopeful and optimistic that we're going to be able to continue to move forward in that area. I talk to the county chair regularly about this, and it's a critical need for us and a missing piece. Hooper Detox itself, the facility, continues to be around and serving people in their detoxification needs, but the actual drop-off part, the sobering part where we would drop people off, is the part that closed, and that's what we need to reconstitute in a safe way.
There's a question here about another question about online reporting. I have to say I'm very grateful to all of you who are involved in using the online reporting system and providing good feedback. And the question is about how to submit suggestions for online reporting. And I was looking on the website. I thought there was a link to provide feedback. I don't see one now, but there's a general information email, just 311@portlandoregon.gov. We work really closely with the folks at 311, and they are really good about forwarding along feedback and suggestions. So you're more than welcome to submit suggestions there, and we can get back to you. The website is something that we handle out of our communications office as far as programming it and putting it together. So we really do value your feedback on that. Please feel free to send us those emails. And I see Dan responded. We were talking earlier about the availability of data, and I see he has thoughts in here about what should be included in the annual report. So we do see those, Dan, and we'll put that into our list of things to consider for future annual reports as we go forward. For those of you who don't know, our annual reports are available right on our website, and the entire report that we've kind of summarized today is also available on the website. So if you really want to get into some of the details about the status of the Bureau, that's a really good option to do. Let's see, how about PDX Reporter? Does that link to you? PDX Reporter, I believe, is the for homeless camps. Commander Simon, do you remember? You may know that.
PDXReport.org is a connection to the Street Services Coordination Center. It doesn't go to the police bureau. It goes into their database, and they plot all the calls for service that come in, and they have a certain scoring metric they use to kind of score and assess camps. They start to send their outreach workers out to talk to these people living outside, and then they do their kind of site assessment, like how big is this? Is this an issue that needs to be addressed by the city? Is this something that will take care of itself? Is this something that outreach can take care of? Is this something that needs police? There's lots of layers to it before they eventually decide to do a cleanup there. And once they do decide to do a cleanup there, if and only when they need some kind of safety issue is when we get involved. We're very last resort, so to speak, for camp cleanups in the city.
Yeah, and there's in fact, there's another question about earlier in the presentation. There was a discussion about addressing 700 camps within the city. Commander Simon, could you talk about who at North Precinct addresses when police become involved? Who is that is doing outreach and any enforcement in homeless camps typically?
It falls down to our neighborhood response team. Our 2 members of the outreach car, that's kind of their primary job. And mostly here in North Precinct, they focus on the long-term RVs and or large embedded sites that have been out in the community for a very long time. The regular sort of low impact, as they call it, the low impact camps will rarely see police. The ones that we're involved in are the big expansive camps that are involved in drug-related activity, violent-related activity, or they're just a humongous footprint in a neighborhood, near a school, near a hospital, near a major thoroughfare. The mayor came out with, I think it was last summer, talking about the I-5 corridor and upping the responsiveness to campsite debris and stuff along the I-5 corridor, that we responded and helped for that. But again, we're very, very last resort for the SSCDC to call us. But we do meet with them every week, and we have a lot of good contact with them, but they only call us when they need us.
Very good. I see that we are coming up on the end of our allotted time, but I wanted to give Chief Day a chance to wrap things up. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Chief, before we close down for the evening?
I just express again my appreciation for showing up tonight. I know it's a sacrifice of time. We'll put this video out so it can be viewed by others. And really thank you for your engagement. I mean, that's what makes us better. I mean, Portland Police Bureau is a highly respected agency throughout the country. And one of the reasons is because our community expects a lot of us. And I just want you to know that I hear that and appreciate that and value that. So thanks for your input. Thanks for your involvement, and stay safe.
All right. Thanks again. Good night.